Welcome back to the channel, guys. We've got a fun video for you today. We are working on Dusty, my 1994 Ford Bronco. If you've been tuned in on the channel, this makes video number 4 in the saga of rebuilding this truck as the ultimate adventure OBS. Something I'm gonna be using for a long time to take my daughter and my wife out camping and just having fun out ripping around in this thing. So in this video, I'm going to be installing the Desolate Motorsports Stage 2 4-inch front suspension system. I've got all the parts here on 2 tables, and I'm gonna walk you guys through the parts, kind of give you an idea of what I'm gonna be installing today. And then the next video will be the rear suspension, and then the video after that will be me trail riding to kind of show you guys how all of this performs. Now, in this kit, we have a couple different options on radius arms. One being the billet aluminum, which is what I opted to go with on this truck. So we've got the Desolate Motorsports super sexy billet aluminum radius arms. We've got 2 sets of 4-inch coil springs. We've got 4 Bilstein shocks. We've got the frame brackets for the radius arms. We've got cut and turned front beams. Now, the reason that this is so important on these trucks is if you just put a 4-inch spring on these things, these beams come way down and then your caster is off on these trucks. So what Desolate does is they take a stock set of beams, they cut and turn the ends of them to make your alignment back in factory geometry, and then they also truss them here in the front and beef them up, and of course weld on the brackets on the back for the radius arms to bolt into. Here at the beam where they mounts to the frame, the factory has a pivot bushing, which is a rubber grommet, rubber bushing, and they're really prone to wear out and have a lot of slop. So on these beams, Desolate gives you a Heim joint that goes up at the front that bolts to the frame, again eliminating all kinds of play in the front suspension. Bunch of bags of hardware here. Everything comes nice and labeled from Desolate. Shock mounts, you got the misalignment shims, shock bolts, shock limit straps here. Anyway, just all the hardware, limit straps as well, and then front brake lines, and then of course all the small miscellaneous hardware around it. Now, one step further in this process that's not part of this kit. When you're disassembling these front TTBs, there's a lot of components. There's, you know, the front third member with your, you know, ring of paint in it. There's a couple sets of U-joints with the axles that are inside this thing, the ball joints at the end. You essentially have to take the whole front end totally apart anyway, and if your truck is old, I mean, this thing's 30 years old, so most of the time, all of those components are worn out. So, Desolate actually offers a master installer kit, which gives you worn locking hubs. The factory automatic hubs on these Broncos and F-150s, they are junk. There's a lot of plastic components inside of them. They're crap. So with their master installer kit from Desolate, they've kind of, again, taken out all the guesswork. Worn locking hubs, all steel construction hubs. You get all the bearings, all the U-joints, all the seals, ball joints, everything to completely rebuild your entire front end with all new components and stronger than stock. And then even one step further, so we got front suspension, master installer kit, and again, because you've got to take the factory third member out of the truck, Desolate even offers fully built and re-geared front Dana 44 third member. So I've got that as well from Desolate. I am going to be going with a 456 gear, front and back obviously, to compensate for a 35-inch tire. So literally the entire front end of this thing is going to be brand new. And then, like I said, we'll move on to the back suspension in the next video. So let's go ahead and get the front suspension torn apart and start hanging some of these new accessories and parts under the truck. And then I'll show you what it looks like when it's all finished up. Everything has been sort of loosely hung. When you have your factory OBS trucks, the factory radius arm brackets on the frames, if they've never been removed, they are riveted on. This truck at one point had already had the radius arm brackets replaced, so they were bolted on. So they're just loosely bolted right now. But keep that in mind, if you're going to be removing your factory radius arms to do this kit, you will have to get a die grinder, air hammer, chisel, you know, however you want to get those rivets off, and then bang those things out so you can get the factory radius arm brackets off. This is going to be a little easier process for me because, like I said, that's already been done. But once we pull those brackets off, it's going to be sort of a just drop out. We'll take the radius arm brackets off the truck. We will disconnect the spring retainer clip, the shocks, and then the pivot beam bolts, and the whole front suspension will just fall out of the truck. We'll take it all out in one kind of like whole assembly, and then we will start hanging each individual component from Desolate individually. And you'll notice here in a second, the factory radius arm. Let me just look at a race arm and show you guys that. So the reason, again, when we're talking about suspension geometry, you know, when we lift this truck, there's a lot of different ways to lift these things, right? But we want optimum performance and suspension handling. So if you just put a 2, 3, 4, 6-inch coil spring in this thing, that's gonna put this way down. The camber is gonna be way cambered out. And then the caster, which is the line between the upper ball joint and the lower ball joint, you have the caster's off. So Desolate does all of the work and engineering to make sure all the factory alignment and geometry is back to where it needs to be. But if you just look at the factory radius arm with this bushing here versus the Desolate one, you know, you've got roughly an extra 10 inches of arm over what the factory one is. So that geometry is going to have a lot smoother arc when the suspension is working, thus giving you a lot better performance and handling when you're using the truck off-road. So, you know, substantial difference in the factory radius arm to the Desolate one as far as terms where it's going to be mounted. Now, obviously, we will have to put a bracket back here on the frame. So to relocate that mounting point, and I'll show you guys all that here in a second, but just very big visual difference between the factory one and this one. So, all right, let's go ahead and start tearing down the Bronco, and then we will start hanging some parts. Ooh, I'm gonna have to give my ABS some love there. Those wires don't look too good. Now, we're gonna very carefully come down with this. There we go. One side is out, baby! This would work better with 2 people. So let's hopefully I don't hurt myself. This side's not so bad. The other side, however, has got the differential in it. That's gonna be more of a bear. Way. Let's go to the next side. Boom. I'm halfway tempted to just leave it here for now. I think that's the safer call. We'll just leave this here on the lift and get that at another point. We'll have some help. Okay, before I start installing all the new suspension, I just want to make a few notable mentions, right? So today actually I had somebody comment on an older video that you know, they didn't have a welder to do any of this stuff. With the stage 2 4-inch mid-travel kit, which is what I'm installing today as the first phase of the suspension upgrades for this truck, it's totally bolt-on. There's no cutting, welding required at all. It's totally bolted on underneath the truck. So keep that in mind. 2, when the TTB first came out back in the 90s, it was state of the art, right? Ride quality was bar none over everything else that was on the road. If you're comparing TTB now, obviously it's super dated, but there's a lot of talk online like how the TTB is, sucks as far as maintenance, steering, whatever. All of that is true if things are worn out, but Desolate takes a lot of that, they take it one level forward, right? With the, increased length in the radius arm, all of the beefed up components with the Heim joints to the rubber pivot bushings, heavier duty ball joints, heavier duty U-joints. Everything is just all of the weak points and the things that typically fail or wear out. Desolate has found a way to improve those components. That way the truck tracks straight, it performs well, and it's a long-term reliable setup to give you, one, a cool aesthetic truck that's higher than stock, it performs how it should, and steers and tracks how it should. So just a few things I wanted to touch on. Bolt-on, no cutting welding required, 11 inches of suspension travel up front, and then all of these components get beefed up with the Master Installer kit. So let's start hanging some new parts. I'm gonna run the bolt up through the frame. I think it'll look prettier that way. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come over here and start assembling stuff that's on the bench, like the shock mounts that go on the radius arms, the decorative, you know, Desolate plates that also go on the radius arms. I'll go ahead and thread in my Heims on the radius arms, and then the Heims for the beams here. These need to be pressed in, and then 2 lock rings that hold those in place. So I'm gonna go ahead and start doing that. And then that way I can hang these beams up on the truck. This should greatly improve how everything handles. So that's one. Where did it go? Oh, here it is. Boom. These will go in like that, either side. That. And that's how those get hung up there. Okay, now that we've got all the pretty bits mounted and fastened to the radius arms, they are, you know, totally assembled essentially, with the exception of the Heim joints. So you got these big Heims that come in the kit for the radius arms. Now everybody's truck and setup is going to be a little bit different. This is going to be set up 4 inches over stock, and it'll stay that way all the way up until it's long traveled. So per the instructions, Desolate recommends running this jam nut all the way up to the top till it bottoms out against the Heim, so it stops there. And then you're gonna run the Heim inside the arm until it bottoms out against the jam nut. Once you get down to that, you're gonna back this back out 5 rotations and then lock your jam nut back down. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. Before I do that though, just a little tech tip. steel and aluminum do not like each other. So in the event of long-term maintenance down the line, we're just gonna put some anti-seize on these threads. Again, it just a little extra measure of protection for future maintenance. So get that in there. Thread that all the way inside until it bottoms out. All right, here's where it bottoms out, right? So we're gonna go 5 rotations back to the direction. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. And then we're gonna lock this jam nut back down. So same thing, exact opposite process here. All right, this is all the way down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Same thing. Lock it down. Boom. All right. Let's go hang these arms on the radius arm brackets on the frame. Swing this bad boy up. Got 2 shock stabs, so everything's just kind of sitting up here. I already pulled the factory pitman arm off. The kit comes with a mild drop, so you guys can see the factory one is almost flat, and then with the 4-inch kit from Desolate, just a little mild drop to keep let's heard somebody honk outside. Anyway, oh, it's a train. Anyway, pitman arm, mild drop there to keep all the steering geometry in check. So go ahead and bolt that back up. Well, the next thing is I need to pull off some hardware off of this so I can set the new springs. In order to do that, there is a 29mm nut holding the spring retainer on inside the coil spring. So got a bunch of extensions here. Gonna back that off, get this spring off, take these couple little brackets that I need out, and then move over to the new stuff. And then I'll start disassembling both of these to get the axles out and start rebuilding that. So making progress. Passenger side is basically done, with the exception of obviously the wheel assembly, axle, and all that stuff. But radius arm is in, limit strap, shock, spring, shock, sway bar mount. Yeah, all of this is loosely hung. I don't have it all buttoned up yet, but it's all where it's supposed to be at. I'm gonna start building the drivetrain and all the other stuff to get it ready to roll. All right, first things first on this disassembly process. I'm gonna pull the caliper out, get the pads, get the brakes out of the way, pull the locking hub off, and then that will give me access to the inner works of the hub, pull the spindle nut off, which should free up the rotor and the wheel bearings, and then we will get to the spindle, and then eventually pull these ball joints, pop these ball joints loose and get the knuckle off. So let's get to turning some wrenches. So you pull this out, we've got a couple springs in here. Now these hubs can be a little intimidating but they're not terrible. So on top of this thing, there's a couple different styles of this. Some of these things have, you know, 5 screws, some are 3 screws, some are manual. They're all a little different, but very similar. So this particular style is, there's actually, somebody's been in here because there's supposed to be a plastic clip inside this slot that keeps this thing from doing what I just did. Anyway, saw that just came out. You're gonna pinch this big snap ring together, and then the whole assembly just comes out. Let's see, there is a C-clip inside there that's got to come out. Boom. That's the clip I was trying to get out of there. There we go. We've got new ones of these. We won't be reusing this. See. All right. You know, once you get this out, outer bearing just falls out, and the same thing on the inner. There's a seal right here that's in the kit that came with the master installer kit. So we'll pop this seal off, put the new inner bearing in, and then reassemble. So before I do that, I'm gonna go ahead and start pulling off all the spindle stuff. All right, here's the fun part. These typically don't like to come off very well. So I'm gonna put this on the floor and whack on it with a dead blow hammer. I guess I could give that a couple goes and see what happens. Ooh, we got lucky. Usually those don't come off that easy. Now what we're gonna do, so I'm gonna wipe this down because this gets reused. Same thing back here. This seal looks like it's shot, and then at some point somebody had pulled this off, and when they did, they used an air hammer, I guess. So we're gonna smooth this down too, so that sits nice and flush because it was not sitting flush. So I'm gonna take a little grinder to that, grind that down, pop this seal off, put a new bearing in here, and then new bearings here. All of this is included in the master installer kit. So the master installer kit comes with the spindle seal, new spindle bearing, and then both wheel bearings, and then of course all the new assembly that goes over this, but everything is all included with the kit. Now we're gonna start the reverse process and putting it all back together. Okay, beautiful. Yeah, that seal is toast. Last thing I'm gonna do here is to get this knuckle off of this beam. This beam will go back to Desolate. They, you know, have cores with their stuff, so obviously they built these beams that I put on this custom. So I'm gonna get these ball joint nuts off of there. Okay. All right, just like that, we are down to the knuckle. So now I'm gonna go get ball joint press. Press these ball joints out of here. We'll clean this up and then we'll start putting it back together on the new side. Just like that, we are totally disassembled. That's a big improvement from what it was a while ago, right? All right, let's go ahead and put some axles in this bad boy. Okay, when you're doing these TTB axles, make sure that you've got them indexed. So not the outer with the output on that one. It needs to be the output to the output here. So in other words, from this yoke to this yoke, the closest to you, they need to be the same. I just feel like for drivability and vibration, that is ideal. So make sure you do that. Anyway, now that we've got this axle in, we're gonna go ahead and start putting together the rest of this bad boy. Now we're down to the final assembly. There's a little bit of specifications when it comes to these spindle nuts. A lot of different methods. Some people will just torque them down, feel the rotor, how it spins. Personally, I'm gonna set the first nut at 55 and then back it off 55 to set the bearings, and then I'm gonna come back a quarter turn. All right, like I said, this first spindle nut, you torque it down to 50 to 55 foot-pounds to seat the bearings, and you're gonna back off quarter turn, 90 degrees. And then next, we're gonna set the holy spacer thing, and then the outer nut. So the outer nut gets torqued to like 160 to 200 foot-pounds of torque. So this is the one that takes some oomph. But whenever you're seating this, you need to be very careful that the pin is correctly seated. There's a little dowel pin on that. You don't want to break that pin. You might have to move that inner lock nut just a hair to make sure the little pin flushly aligns inside that washer, because if you don't, you'll ruin that. You don't want to do that. Now we're going to put on our outer lock nut. And then this is the one that gets cranked down super heavy. So we're going to bump this up to 160 foot-pounds. There it is. Boom. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and install my Warren locking hubs. Again, this is part of the Master Installer Kit. Make sure you pull your axle all the way out so you have plenty of clearance. Warren actually suggests that you don't have to lube these. They already come pre-lubed. I put a little bit of lube on there anyway. So slide this in. I'm going to insert the snap ring. Now, we've got a big snap ring that goes around the outside. Like so. Next, I'm going to put the cap on, make sure it's spun all the way into free spool. All right, passenger side is ready to rock. I'm gonna go finish the driver's side, and then we'll be ready to put some wheels back on this bad boy. All right guys, you've watched me tear down the stock suspension, pull off the old 30-year-old twin traction beam on the old 94 Ford Bronco, aka Dusty. You watched me reinstall the Desolate Motorsports Stage 2 4-inch suspension system that comes with an optional billet radius arm, which is what we went with on this truck, quad Bilstein shocks, cut and turn beams up front to make sure that the alignment tracks the way it's supposed to. We replaced the pivot bushings with Heims. Let's see what else. Yeah, and then we obviously did the Master Installer Kit from Desolate Motorsports as well. Again, replacing every single part and component that would wear out on this truck. Ball joints, pinion bearings, pinion seals, hub bearings, hub seals, axle nuts, Warren locking hubs. Literally everything, hub to hub, frame down, is totally brand new. All sourced from Desolate Motorsports. Quick and easy bolt-on kit. Every single part of this thing was totally bolt-on. No cutting, no welding, bolted it right on. So you could do this in your driveway if you wanted to on jack stands. Actually, to be honest with you, it probably would have been a little easier on jack stands because having to rearrange my lift to make clearance for the radius arms was kind of a pain in the ass. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Stick around. The next video is going to be the Trail Runner rear suspension, which is going to be a rear leaf spring. We're going to do a transfer case skid plates and then a couple shackles and shackle kits on the rear end. And then we're going to put some wheels and tires in this thing, put it on the ground, and then the next video after that, we're going to go out and trail ride it. So the object for that video is just to show you guys the modularity with all of the Desolate components and then how you can stage your kit up from, you know, mild to pre-running wild. So I think this is going to be a very capable and fun setup, so I'm excited to get it on the ground and go show you guys that in a couple of videos. So if you have any questions about everything so far, drop a comment below. I'll be more than happy to answer those questions for you. If you liked the video, please like the video. You know, if you're enjoying watching me rebuild this 30-year-old Bronco, aka Dusty, let me know. It means a lot if you guys are enjoying the content or how I can maybe change it and make it a little bit better for you guys. So, all right guys, that's it for this one. We'll see you in the next video, rear suspension. What do you guys think?